From the insane amount of experience Do Bronx has in the octagon to his aggressive fighting style that allows him to finish almost everyone, these are the reasons why Charles Olivera will destroy Islam Makhachev. Let's kick this off with how experienced the Brazilian is, because Islam's resume is nothing compared to Olivera's. If you want to know what the definition of a UFC veteran is, then all you have to do is look at Charles's pro record. This dude has over 30 fights with the promotion. And if you think that's impressive, then let me remind you about how he consistently clashes with the most elite fighters in the UFC. Sure, when Charles was a featherweight, he couldn't string together a solid win streak, but once he moved up to the lightweight division, he completely turned his career around, winning 11 fights in a row between 2018 and 2022. During that span, he defeated some of the best fighters in the UFC, such as Jared Gordon, Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and Michael Chandler. Then, he recovered from his tough loss at UFC 280 when he annihilated Beneil Dariush at UFC 289. That's one scary resume right there, and Makhachev is nothing compared to it. Yeah, I know that Dagestani has an unreal record, but he hasn't beaten nearly as many world-class fighters as Olivera has. Makhachev's best wins are against Bobby Green, Charles, and Alexander Volkanovski. Here's the thing though, Green isn't an elite fighter, and many argue that Volk was robbed against Islam. So his most credible victory is against Do Bronx himself. But make no mistake, Olivera won't allow that to happen again. Plus, the Brazilian has far more momentum heading into their potential rematch. After Olivera's heartbreaking loss to the Dagestani, all eyes were on the Brazilian when he faced off against Benny. Fans and pros thought it would be a tough fight to win. Yet, Do Bronx made an absolute mockery out of Dariush, finishing him within the first round. Just like that, he catapulted himself back into contention for the lightweight championship, leaving the MMA world awestruck with his striking masterclass. Fans are calling for him to get the title shot, and they want to see him win the championship once more. The story isn't the same for Islam. As I told you earlier, almost the entire MMA world believes that the Great was robbed of double champ status at UFC 284. Both men went to war. But by the end of the fight, Makhachev was bruised and battered, looking like he couldn't fight another second. Volk, on the other hand, looked like he could go for a few more rounds. When you couple this with the fact that the Australian won rounds 2, 3, and 5, it's hard to see how the judges scored the bout in favor of Islam. So not only did the Dagestani barely get the W, but most fans aren't accepting him as their champ. That's why I think it's safe to say that he doesn't have nearly as much momentum as Charles does. Meaning that the Brazilian should be able to pick apart Makhachev when they meet. And it's not just me who thinks that. In fact, the man himself, Sean O'Malley, does as well. Following Do Bronx's dominant win over Beneil, Suga said he seems fired the F up, motivated, ready to go. Much like myself, O'Malley pointed to how Islam is coming off a controversial win, while Charles put on one of the greatest performances of 2023. That's gotta have an impact on how both men feel heading into the blockbuster rematch. Following that, Sean said that it's hard to say who'd come out on top, but he claims that Olivera might be able to outstrike the Dagestani. I'll have to agree with him on that, because the Brazilian striking is far superior than Makhachev's. He has a ton of punches in his arsenal, and throws each of them with so much finesse. Not only does he have good hand speed, but Charles's punches are pretty damn accurate as well. Take his jab, for example. It's technical, powerful, and precise, so when it lands, it leaves his opponents dazed. Then there's Olivera's right cross, which is quick and just as powerful as his jab. If you want to see it in action, then look no further than his fight against the highlight. What's more, his right hook packs quite the punch and has a tight arc, allowing the Brazilian to hurt his foes when they're coming in with a punch. Sort of like what he did to Jared Gordon back in 2019. That being said, Do Bronx's best punch is essentially his spectacular left hook. It's so accurate and powerful that his opponents get rocked by it. They're going straight to the mat. Michael Chandler knows exactly what I'm talking about. But it's not just Charles's punches that make him a better striker than Islam. After all, his kicks are terrific as well. When it comes to Olivera's leg kicks, they're fast and carry a lot of power. Moving on to his body kicks, they're some of the best in the world right now. Honestly, it's a sight for sore eyes when he hits his foes with that mean kick to their midsection. To top it all off, he's got quick and powerful knee strikes. So let's just say that unlike Makhachev, he has a bunch of tricks up his sleeve when it comes to striking. Islam fans might say this isn't an issue because of how fantastic the Dagestani's grappling is. But guess what? Olivera's grappling is pretty damn good too. When he shoots in for takedowns, he goes for a fast, textbook double leg takedown, which has been pretty effective for Dubronx in most of his matchups. But that's not his only move, because he also uses a double leg outside trip at times. Besides that, he possesses a lot of strength in his skinny frame, so he can even pick up his foes before slamming them down onto the mat. To make matters worse for Makhachev, when the former lightweight champ takes his opponents down, he displays unreal top control thanks to his heavy hips. Not to mention, Charles has some of the best ground and pound attacks in the promotion. The Brazilian makes brilliant use of brutal elbow strikes and couples them with some accurate punches, leaving his opponents in a world of pain. That being said, I've got to talk about Dubronx's phenomenal ability to wrestle in the clinch. I mean, the way he lifted Miles Jury and took him down with the help of an outside trip was crazy. But it's not as if he only did this once. In fact, Charles even dominated dudes like Jim Miller as well as Tony Ferguson in the clinch. Though at the same time, it's impossible to ignore how good Islam's grappling is. But don't worry, Dubronx fans, because the Brazilian has terrific takedown defense. Much like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Makhachev relies heavily on takedowns. Though, Islam can't keep going for them against a dude like Charles. Why? Because he's got a deadly guillotine counter. If you want to see it in action, look at how he used it against elite grapplers like Clay Guida and Kevin Lee. Both of them made the same mistake, as they jumped ahead to take down Olivera. But within the blink of an eye, he hit them with the guillotine counter, choking them out in the process. And I'm sure he's hoping to do the same thing to Islam. That being said, when you're up against a dude like the Dagestani, there's always a chance of being taken down. Though again, Charles won't need to worry because his hip escapes are goated. Do you know what else is goated? Olivera's submission skills. This dude is the definition of a submission specialist. So if he gets Islam in one of his signature holds, it's gonna be game over for Makhachev. After all, the former lightweight champ has won over 20 fights thanks to his submission skills. And it's not as if he's a one-trick pony who relies solely on one hold. In fact, Dubronx has various submissions in his arsenal. His favorite is the rare naked choke, but Olivera has also forced his foes to tap out with the help of an anaconda choke, a triangle armbar, a guillotine choke, and even a calf slicer. Sheesh. Now, if you couple the Brazilian submission skills with his insane fighting style, it's hard to see how Islam could come out on top in the rematch. The former champ's always focused on going in for the kill, allowing him to destroy dudes like Guida, Dariush, Miller, Gordon, and Gagey within the first round. Besides that, he stopped many others in the second. Joe Rogan said it best: when Charles goes into the octagon, he fights like a berserker. All he wants to do is either KO his foes or get them to tap out. While he may have failed to do this at UFC 280, he's been pretty successful at finishing his opponents, as he holds the record for the most finishes in UFC history. Plus, Charles is hungrier than ever, and I think a second bout against him spells disaster for the Dagestani. So, from the Brazilian's aggressive fighting style that allows him to finish almost everyone, to the insane amount of experience he has in the octagon, those were the reasons why Charles Olivera will destroy Islam Makhachev.